Hi everyone. I hope you're all doing well. If this is your first lecture of the series, welcome. It's great to have you here. If you've already sat um, other lectures either during these holidays or previous holidays, welcome back. It's great to see you all again. My name is Amandi. I will be taking the lecture for how to ACE QCE today. Hopefully everyone watching is either I would say the best time to watch this lecture is probably going to be grade 11. Because we're going to go through all of the basics of QCE, which you guys are just kind of starting to get into with unit 1 and 2 now. If you are in grade 12, there will be some things that are helpful for the lecture, but most of it is going to be information that you probably know by now, I would say. And of course, I'm going to go through exam strategies and tips and tricks and, resources that you can use and things like that. But at this point in time, I'm fairly sure the grade 12s know what they're doing. As for, grade 11s or even grade 10s who are maybe going into grade 11 subjects soon, this is a really good lecture to watch. If you haven't already, I hope you have checked out any of the other lecture series that we've got during these holidays. It's a great way to get a little bit of a head start on the content that you're going to be doing in term 3. All of the lectures across the series are recorded, so you're watching a recorded version of the lecture, and you'll be able to flick back to any point in the lecture after the day that it's been streamed. So hang on to these links and things like that in case you want to do any revision going forward, or check back to any of the things that I may talk about. Um, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions throughout the lecture, either about the content that we're covering or just about, QCE, ATAR, grade 12, senior in general, let me know. I won't be answering them live on the stream, but I will be monitoring the chat, and I'll be able to give you a reply that way. So make a good use of that. If you have any questions about, I don't know, uni applications or work experience, let me know as well, and I'll try my best to answer. So without further ado, I've got a little bit of an introduction to give you all just about ATAR notes and what this series is going to give you. So all of us working at ATAR notes are previous students who are trying to create resources for current students of Queensland. Obviously, we've got tutors who come from all over Australia, but for you guys, every single one of the tutors who are currently working for QCE TuteSmart or ATAR Notes are ATAR graduates. So I myself graduated in 2021, so 2 years ago now, and I've been tutoring ever since. So I knew the syllabus and I knew how the system sort of worked well enough when I was in grade 12, but through tutoring more students and just learning a little bit more about QCE, I've got a fairly good idea of the things that seem to work and the things that seem to not work, and also how the system sort of works in general. And it's a really good idea that you guys are able to sort of follow along with the system. I can give you, everything I know so far, but things are always going to change. So having a good foundation of what already exists is going to be really important for you guys. Um, Us at the company, we create all sorts of resources for senior students to use. One of them is the lecture series, which I've already talked about, honestly, and you probably know what's going on with that as well. But they do happen every holidays. So if you find that tuning into this lecture or any of the other subject lectures was helpful, I took the biology one as well, so you might see me on that recording too. Please feel free to use the September holiday lecture series as well. If you signed up to our website, you will get notified when all of these things are happening. Then all you've got to do is register. It's completely free, and it is just a way that you can sort of revise on the holidays without doing anything too strenuous. The subject lectures are actually really good. You get practice exam questions and all of the content towards the syllabus as well. So I highly recommend you check them out if there are any subjects that you're currently doing. As for general revision, this is sort of the lecture that we go to regarding that, where I'll just be talking you through resources, how the QCE system works, and any FAQs that you might have. So in terms of resources, I've mentioned that word quite a bit already, but for our free resources, they're all available on the website for you to use. So if I just flick over to the ATAR Notes website very, very quickly, you can create an account completely for free on this, and you get access to all of our resources. So they're all organized under the QCE tab here. But if you feel like you want to cross-reference with, VCE questions or NSW questions that might be similar to our syllabuses, you've got access to all of those as well. Study notes are usually available for you to download for free, and they're all uploaded by our tutors and students and our community. On here, we've got, free study articles that are coming about that you can use, whether that be, guides to creative writing, essay writing, which should be the one that all of the English and Lit students would be interested in for the external. Frequently asks questions, just general articles that may give you a bit of an insight into senior life. We've also got discussion and forum pages where you can post questions. They're monitored by tutors like us, who are able to, give the answer to your question. We've got a newsletter that comes out with all of the updates that are happening, as well as an ATAR calculator. So you can, that one is based on the last 3 years of data now, and can be used as sort of like a rough guide on the kinds of scores that you need to be getting for the ATARs that you want. In terms of other resources, these are ones that I'll be talking a little bit more extensively about. We have a tutoring program called TuteSmart. Now, that's personally where I work. I work as a tutor for ATAR Notes. And when it's not the holiday lecture series, we've got live classes that happen for 1.5 hours every week. There's like a timetable that you can check on the TuteSmart website. For all of the main core subjects. Basically, every week you choose another topic underneath the syllabus. The tutors will give you all of the syllabus related content. So, things that you only need to know for the external, as well as access to, worksheets that we've created ourselves, exam questions, practice exams, revision sessions, and etc., etc. So TuteSmart is a really, really good opportunity for you to get onto the syllabus. Every single one of those classes is recorded, so you are able to kind of go through each of the lessons that have been streamed. On top of that, we also offer private tutoring. So if you are interested in brushing up a little bit before the external, or if you're a grade 11 who kind of wants a bit of support going into senior, we have private tutoring services. So you'll be paired up with a tutor. You get about one session per week to start off with, and you can build it up if you want multiple subjects. And basically, another person is there to go through revision with you and give you access to practice questions and help you with any content that you may be having any trouble with. Personally, the resources that I used from ATAR Notes when I was in high school were the study guides. I remember, if any of you have lived down in like Brisbane, there's a careers expo that happens in the convention center, and there was a booth for ATAR Notes there. I was like, this would have been grade 10, I think, is when I first met them, but they were selling all of these books, like study guides and things like that. I bought the biology and chemistry topic test booklets, and I use them very, very extensively during grade 12. Super, super helpful. And they're available to purchase on our website. If I could give you one recommendation, when it came to grade 12, I bought the text guide for Macbeth, because that was the book that we were studying for our English external. That was so, so helpful, because all of the analysis, all of the literary devices, stylistic devices, and aesthetic features were just there in front of me. I used that book super, super extensively. I would show you the notes that I had made in it, but I've currently given it to a family friend. But they were very, very helpful. And I do believe that they would be the resource that I would like most highly recommend. Super, super good when I was in grade 12. If you are a little bit more tech savvy, we've also got a resource that honestly I think is very, very valuable, called Ed Unlimited. and basically it's a monthly subscription, so you pay a little per month to get access to all of our publications. So ATAR Notes publishes their own course notes written by the tutors. If I type up QCE here, you'll be able to see. This is lit, for example. For the 2021 to 2023 syllabus, it's got the course notes for all aspects of the syllabus, whether it be, quote books, study notes, um, practice essays, etc., etc. And you get access to every single one of our publications, not only for the QCE syllabus, but also for the or I should say HSC syllabus and the that's the other one, VCE syllabus. When I was in grade 12, the QCE topic test booklets for bio and chem actually weren't out at the moment. They've been published very, very recently. So this book that you see right here for biology, not available when I was in your position. And so I actually ended up buying the New South Wales biology and chemistry topic tests. And I worked through all of the questions that were similar to the ones in our syllabus. And the book comes with like really, really in-depth work solutions at the end of the chapters, and they were very, very helpful in me familiarizing myself with how I should answer my external questions. So this is really, really nice. In terms of the text guides, they're actually all available on Ed Unlimited as well. If I scroll down, the Macbeth one's like a lime green color. This literally saved my English external, which I was actually very happy with how I did that on as well. They come with practice essays in the back as well. Not to sort of aid your revision and things like that. One other feature on Ed Unlimited is ATAR Notes has a little bit of a partnership with NEEP, which is a company that writes mock exams for schools to purchase. Now, usually they can be on the up end of $100 to purchase, but if you have an Ed Unlimited subscription, you actually get access to heaps of NEEP practice papers. If I type in QCE, I should be able to scroll down. Here we go. So, for example, chemistry units 3 and 4, you get an entire external practice paper. And I remember doing the NEEP trial examinations when I was in, you know, doing mocks and external prep, and they were of a pretty high standard. Like they were having similar difficulty to the actual external. So considering the fact that you get course notes, practice questions, text guides, and practice exam papers, Ed Unlimited is a pretty dope resource, and I would highly recommend that you check it out if you are in grade 12 or even in grade 11. As for the rest of the lecture, basically what I'm going to be doing is going through as many of the core aspects of the QCE syllabus system as I can. Because we are still relatively new. I know we've been playing around with ATARs in Queensland for the past 3 years, but it it still seems like there's bits and pieces that are a little bit not well known amongst other people. So hopefully I can try and clear things up for you guys. Before we get into any of that though, I do want to introduce myself so you know sort of know who I am. My name is Amandi. I am currently a second year uni student. I graduated from Ipswich Girls Grammar School in 2021, and my subject combination was biochem, methods specialist, English, and Japanese. I like to tell people that I did 2 maths, 2 sciences, and 2 languages. Currently, I am a UQ student. I study a Bachelor of Science. My major is biomedical science, and I also have provisional entry into medicine right now. If there are any med curious people watching the stream right now, if you've got any questions about, applications, UCAT, I know most of the people sitting the UCAT would be sitting it very soon. So if you are a UCAT curious person, I wish you the best of luck. But if you have any questions relating to, my uni degree or uni applications as well, let me know and I can answer them. Uh, so please ask. there is a question box down below where you can ask all of those questions. I graduated with an ATAR of 99.40. And fun fact about me is I used to be in your position right now watching the ATAR Notes lecture series. And so it feels a bit, special to come back as a tutor. And it's one of the reasons why I applied to work here anyway, because they were very helpful. So now that we've got all of the housekeeping stuff done, here's the plan for today. What we're going to talk about first is just the change to the ATAR system. What does that actually mean in terms of you guys? If you are in grade 12 and you're listening along, this will be pretty self-explanatory to you. I'm then going to go through how the ATAR subject scores are sort of calculated and how they are scaled as well. So we're going to do a bit of scaling. What is this? What's the word that I'm looking for? A scaling rundown for you within the next 2 hours. I'm going to talk a little bit about course and career decisions, but the main part of the second half of the lecture is going to be top studies tips to actually get a good ATAR, and then resources that you can use for grade 12, or even grade 11 if you're one of the younger ones watching this lecture. So, in terms of ATAR, this is the story that we have so far. ATARs were first implemented in 2020, and if we think back to what was going on in that year, the first round of the system didn't really go exactly as planned. Because of the pandemic, one of the assessment pieces was scrapped from the syllabus completely, and so the weightings changed, and the scaling that came out was a little bit different to my year and then the year after me, or last year. So some of the information that we had, going into the ATAR system was equally confusing when it came to me being in grade 12, because the year beforehand was, the first year to go through the pandemic. I think now things have settled out a little bit more, and students and teachers alike are more aware of what the system is. But the way that ATARs were introduced to all of us, it would be like the new OP, and instead of your school's results or your grades results in fact impacting your final results, you are in control of everything, which is true. That is completely true. The only thing that is affecting the mark that you get at the end of senior year is your internal results and your external results, which is different to the OP because it was more of a scaled thing. To get an ATAR, you need to study either a combination of 5 general QCE subjects or 4 subjects and 1 applied subject. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means later on. So ATARs are, here we go. In order to cope with the new system change, a lot of schools have introduced starting grade 11 or starting grade 12 earlier than the start of the year. So for me, I officially started Unit 3 or grade 12 work in the final term of grade 11. Some schools choose to take it a back entire semester, so you've just got more time to cover the syllabus. What this usually means is around the end of term 2 and about the start of term 3, all of you would have finished all of your school-based or internal assessments. So there's just more time for people to focus on the external exam, preparing for mocks, and trying to get exam preparation time maximized in the best way that they can. So in terms of what's the deal, the ATAR, according to QTAC, is the primary mechanism used nationally for tertiary admissions and indicates a student position relative to the other students. At the end of the day, it's a mark that shows you how well you've ranked against all of the other students in Queensland. Universities will use it to admit you into their courses, but honestly, beyond that, it's kind of a useless number. So never should you consider the ATAR as the single most important thing that you encounter, especially considering that we live in Australia. There are so many opportunities for you to go into the career that you want to go into or get into the university course that you want beyond an ATAR. So at the end of the day, yes, it is good to care about, your final results and work towards a particular goal if you do have them, but never has it been the be all and end all of your future. So care about it, but don't let it consume your life. In terms of like what it is actually, the ATAR isn't just a simple score. It's having an average of 80% across all of your subjects isn't going to mean that you graduate with ATAR of 80. Instead, it's more of a percentile rank. So it shows how well you have scored against all of the other people in your cohort across the state. It ranges from a scale of 0 to 99.95, where that top ATAR means that you're in the top 0.05% of all students in the state. ATARs of 100.00 do not exist. 99.95 is the highest, and they decrease in increments of 0.05. So a 99.9 would be the top 0.1% of people in the state. If you get an ATAR that is less than 30, your actual number is not going to be disclosed. It'll be just written as less than 30. In terms of ATARs being released, so there are kind of two entities that are important to deal with when it comes to ATARs and QCE. The first one is QCEA, which we'll talk a little bit more about in more detail later on in the lecture. The second one is QTAC. QCEA are the ones who are responsible for writing your syllabus. They're the ones responsible for confirming your internal like exam papers and confirmation of your marks when you finished your IAs. They're also the ones responsible for writing the external, marking the external, and giving you your external results. So all of the stuff that's directly related to your subjects and exams and the content that you're learning is QCEA. They're the ones that I'm going to focus on in today's lecture, by the way. The second entity that you kind of deal with is QTAC. So QTAC receive all of your scores, all of your subject information from QCEA. They are the ones that end up calculating your ATAR. So they're the ones that do all of the scaling processes. They calculate your ATAR, and they are also the ones that look after uni applications. So all of your university preferences at the end of grade 12 will be submitted onto a QTAC application, and QTAC is the one that gives you the uni offers at the end of the year as well. Probably a good idea to store your passwords and login details for both of these websites in a very safe place. Something that was recommended to me when we were in grade 12 is to create a new email, like first name, last name, .student at Gmail, hotmail.com, outlook.com. That was specifically for all of your uni applications. So all of your emails regarding your subject scores or scholarship information or uni applications would go to one place and you could have it all in one email. So you didn't have to sift through anything else. I actually did that. That was actually very helpful. So I could constantly just check everything off one email instead of using my personal or school email. For any of these websites, both the QCE portal, the QCE portal and the QTAC applications do not use your school email, because once you graduate from high school, that email will be deleted and you'll no longer have access to it. So you always have to use a personal email, number one. And number two, try and make it an email that's specific to all of this stuff going on, like a student email. QTAC actually has two logins that you need to be wary of. The first login is for your uni application. So this is where you write your QTAC application and you put in your uni preferences. The second website is for your ATAR. So that's where your, like the day that the ATARs are released, that's the website that you need to log into to see all of that. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions about, the spiel that I just gave you, put it in the chat box and I can put it in writing so it's nice and easy to understand. in terms of actually being eligible for an ATAR, you must pass an English subject. So that can either be essential English, English as a first language, general English, which is what I did, or literature. As in, you must get 40 out of 100 or more to get an ATAR, period. However, it doesn't necessarily need to be a subject that contributes to your ATAR. So some people choose to, well, I chose to study 6 subjects so I could have a backup, but only 5 are going to be counted. Your top 5 scaled subject scores are going towards your ATAR. If English is your 6th subject, that is totally fine. As long as you have passed, you will still get an ATAR at the end of the day. In terms of scaled, what that basically means is according to the competitiveness and difficulty of your subject, your score may either increase or decrease relative to people who have gotten the same score in different subjects. And after the scaling has completed, your top 5 will be selected and those will go towards your ATAR. So that combination could be 5 general subjects. So things like your maths, English, humanities, arts, music, drama, technologies, and anything sort of financial or business related are usually general subjects. Applied subjects, you have the option of sitting one of them and still being able to graduate with an ATAR. These include things like vocational education, any certs that you may be doing, as well as the essential subjects as well. You could be doing, yeah, so that's the other option. You could be doing 4 general subjects or vet or cert 3 or higher type of qualification. At the end of the day, top 5 are selected, and then that is what is used to rank you against everyone else in the grade. So, hopefully, if any of you are maybe any grade 10s who are listening to the stream right now, maybe interested in, subject selection, let me know if you've got any questions about the subjects that you're doing and I can answer them. For in general, I completely lost what I was going to say. Right. ATAR calculation is what we're going to talk a little bit about next. Now, there's some crazy maths involved here, so I'll try and simplify it as much as I can. But for the sake of the example, let's say that you're studying these 6 general QCE subjects. So this student is doing bio, psych, English, legal, methods, and geography. Oh, sorry. Geography. On the middle column of the table, you'll be getting the score. So this is what they actually got as a mark out of 100. And the status will be sort of what happens to it after getting scaled. So these are the students' scores for each of their subjects. They got a 78 in bio, 70 in psychology, 65 in English, 65 in legal, 58 in methods, and a 56 in geography. Now that score in the middle of the table there is the scaled score. So after all of the stuff that QTAC has done, because they're the ones that look after scaling, these are the scores that the student has received out of 100. The top 5 are bio to maths methods, and those will all be contributing towards the student's ATAR. Geography, which was the 6th and therefore the subject that ranked the lowest, is the one that doesn't contribute. And so when people are going to choose their subjects, let's say this is probably important information for people in, grade 9, 10, but you want to sort of choose 5 subjects that you are quite strong at or you perform well in. And then your 6th subject, if you do choose to do a 6th, is try and make it one that you can kind of chill in for the most part. Because one of them isn't going to be counted at the end of the day. It is, however, still a good idea to maximize the marks in each of your subjects in case something goes wrong somehow and you need to rely on that backup. Some students will choose to do accelerated subject in grade 11. So they sit the grade 12 syllabus in grade 11 and finish the subject a year early. So they get a free period in grade 12. if you're interested in doing that, I highly recommend it. That free period is going to be so helpful to you, and it's also one less subject to worry about come external time, um, which is very, very useful to have. And so we go on to the question of how are these subject scores calculated? It's crazy, crazy maths involved. So each of your QCE Unit 3 subjects is out of 100. Oh, sorry. And only your Unit 3 and 4 content will be going towards your ATAR at the end of grade 12. Unit 1 and 2 is just a trial run. It's background information. You can't get tested on Unit 1 and 2 content unless like one of the Unit 3 and 4 pieces of content is built on the Unit 1 and 2 content. From that score out of 100, that is your raw score, and that is the score that QCAA gives you. I do know you do get access to all of your raw scores at the end of the year. I know I definitely got mine. On the day that the ATARs come out, usually ATARs come out at 9 a.m. in the morning, right? At midnight of that day, QCAA posts all of the raw scores on the My QCE portal. So I had access to my external results and my scores out of 100 um, at midnight the day of the ATIRs were releasing. They don't actually tell you that. And I don't know if they're going to stop doing that for you this year, but they have done it for the past couple of years. The ATAR is then released the following morning, so you've got a bit of a wait period if you want to stay up late to check. Your raw scores are then given to QTAC, and QTAC looks at how competitive the subject is and how well you've performed, and then performs all of the scaling procedures. And we'll be going into that in a lot more detail later on in the lecture. The subject score out of 100 comes from a combination of your internal assessment and your external assessment. So I'm sure all of you know what that means now. Internal assessments are the ones that are created for you through school. So your teachers are the ones who are writing these. Just to make sure that everything is standardized, though, these internal assessments are sent to QCAA and moderated before coming back for you to sit in your exam. So every single school has to be checked that all of the internal assessments and like task sheets are of the same standard before being sent back to the school. If everything is okay, then you get to sit the exam, write the assignment if it's a assignment, and then you will get marked. That mark is then sent back to QCAA for confirmation, where they check that the teacher hasn't marked too harshly or too leniently, and moderates all of the scores across Queensland. Those assessment pieces that are taken for confirmation are at random. And what we found is like if your piece gets sent to confirmation for one subject, there's actually a good chance that you're going to get another piece taken for another subject. And now that we're 3 years into the system, the amount of confirmation changes is usually quite low, which is good. But there always is that chance of your mark changing after confirmation occurs. The place where you can see if your mark has changed is the My QCE portal through the QCAA website, which we actually will go through later on. So in terms of general subjects, most of your general subjects that go towards your QCE will have 3 pieces of internal assessment. They can be a mixture of exams, assignments, and are worth about 10 to up to 35% of your grade. There is one more assessment at the end of the year, which is your external exam. That's the one that is created entirely by QCAA. And sometimes the external exam will be, a mixture of 2 papers, like for the STEM subjects, or sometimes it's one singular paper, like for most of the other general subjects. In terms of maths and science, though, internal assessment costs 50% of your score out of 100, and the external makes up the other half. For all of your other subjects, internal assessment is worth 75% of your grade, and external assessment is worth 25% of your grade. The best tip that I can give you is try and maximize your internal assessments as much as you can, because they're the ones that you sort of have control over. They're the ones that your teacher has created. They can give you, revision sheets that are targeted towards the exam. You can get, drafted for assignments by your teacher, etc., etc. So putting in the work to get the best possible internal results that you can are going to guarantee that you're in a comfortable position come external time. And there's less sort of up in the air about what you can do in that external. So yeah, science subjects have a heavier weighting on exams. Right. So applied subjects are the second kind of subject type that you can do for ATA. Applied subjects are the ones that are suited to students who are primarily interested in pathways beyond secondary school that lead to vocational education and training and work. So all of your certs, all of your vet subjects are the ones that are applied subjects. And typically speaking, they're a little bit more practical than your general subjects are. For this one, if you do more than one applied subject, you are no longer eligible for an ATAR, but every single one of the assessment pieces for these subjects are internal and made by either your course coordinator or your school teacher, depending on, where you're doing the subjects. So there's no external examination that's coordinated by the QCEE. Unfortunately, because of this, they are scaled a little bit lower, because there isn't as much moderation that the QCEE can do. For vet qualifications that are Cert 3 or higher, they will have a single scaled score that can be included in a student's ATAR. For example, a Cert 3 in hospitality and a Cert 3 in lab skills will have the same exact scale score. This will be regardless of the duration or area of study for the cert. So all of the scaling for the applied subject kind of happens at a level basis rather than like a content basis. Whereas scaling for general subjects happens at a content basis and a competitiveness basis instead. It is expected that the scaled score for a completed vet diploma will be higher than a vet cert 5, which will be a vet cert 4, sorry, which will be higher than the scaled score for a vet cert 3. In terms of assessment overview, as we know, there are 50% of the weighting in your raw score is towards internal assessment in maths and science, 75% of the weighting in your other non-STEM subjects. The 3 internal assessments for general subjects, there are 4 internal assessments for applied subjects. And the internal assessments are developed by the schools, but in line with the guidelines set by the syllabus for each subject. Right, so with that done, I'm going to screen share back to the QCEE website. If you are in grade 12, you would be pretty familiar with this already, but I want to make sure that you know everything that sort of goes on in the on the website here. For most of you, you will be sticking to the senior subjects tab. So if you go on to the QCEE homepage, you can click on senior secondary here, and senior subjects is where you want to be in. Just for the sake of a little bit of variety, I'm going to open bio because I teach bio. This is the subject that I'm most comfortable with. And for other people, I'm just going to put in English, just because both of them are quite popular subjects. Now, for biology, which is a 50% subject, they give you a little overview. This isn't going to be too important to you, but what is going to be important to you is on the syllabus tab, this document right here. Now, in the best way that I can describe it, this is going to be the, oh, sorry, I just tabbed to the wrong thing. There we go. This is sort of like the Bible for your respective subject. Everything that you need to know is going to be in this one document. Honestly speaking, the first couple of pages are a little bit useless, but what is going to be important to you is these big tables. So once you hit one of the units, this is unit 1 for any of the grade 11s watching here, you'll come across these massive tables of the topics under each unit. Oh, sorry. The topics under each unit, as well as the subtopics. And what you get here are the subject matter dot points. These right here are what you need to be able to do for your external exam. And what I like to suggest to all of my students, and also what I did during high school, was I copied and pasted all of these dot points into either a Word document, or I had like books that I wrote for my maths and chemistry. I would go through, like when I was doing revision for the externals, I would go through my textbook and go through all of my class notes and organize it all under each of the headings. So I think I can show you as an example. Maybe not. We'll see. Um, no. Okay. I'll have to fish it through my Google Drive, but that can be done later when we're going through exam study techniques. I would put all of my content, all of the diagrams, and maybe a couple of example questions under each of the dot points until it was this big document that had everything I needed to know. And I think that is the smartest way to go about doing the content-based subjects, so your maths and sciences and things. For your oh, oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know. I'm yawning so much. For each of the dot points, they start with a verb that is known as a cognitive verb. And basically, QCAA uses these with purpose. And every single one of these verbs has a particular way that you need to answer come external time. So with describe, the amount of detail that you need to give is a little bit less than with explain. With explain, you need to give like justification and reasoning. Whereas understand would just be like multiple choice, you just need to circle the correct answer. You don't need to know anything about the reasoning or like causes of the topic. Predict is you being able to use existing information to infer what will happen in the future, etc., etc. If you come across compare, that means you need to understand the like similarities and differences and then explain the reason behind the differences. Whereas contrast is just state the differences and similarities with no reasoning. Um, so for bio, that's all of the stuff that you're going to do in topic 1, unit 1, topic 2. And then for unit 2, they do a similar thing. So all of the dot points that you are required to know are organized into the subtopics. For my classes, and it's the same for all of the other subject classes at TuteSmart, all of the tutors write their lessons and prepare their lessons surrounding the syllabus dot points. So we're giving you the information that is directly related to what you're going to be assessed in the external. It's the same thing for English, whereas I mean English is a little bit more subjective. There's not really content that you need to memorize. It's just more about the text types that you're studying. So if I go into unit 1, you can see here that English in general. Now, if you want more info on the, English syllabus, I highly recommend you check out the lecture that is being given for the holiday. Oh, sorry. For the holiday series. English and QCE, and I can't really speak for literature, but general English really, really favors when you link any ideas in a text to how the audience is supposed to perceive those ideas. So, say if you're studying a novel that was, written reflecting events in World War II, your ability as an analyzer to understand how people would have felt during the time of World War II versus how people feel about those themes now is going to be really, really important. If you've ever, looked at an ISMG in English, you would have seen the phrase cultural assumptions, values, and beliefs. It's a huge, huge set of criteria that um, basically involves you as an analyzer or you as a text creator being able to understand how people will feel after reading a piece of text, which is hugely important for the English syllabus. And so English doesn't really have a. Oh, I'm so sorry. English, rather than having a table of all of the dot points, it's got a list of things that you need to get for your A grades, your B grades, your C grades, and your D grades, etc., under each of the units. Here's our unit description. This isn't really too important, but in the in the assessment guidance section, you can see what they expect from each of your pieces. Now, for the glossary, if you come across a verb that you don't really know what is going on, for example, for Unit 3 in biology, there is this one verb that is select and appraise. Appraise is not very commonly used as an exam question. All of the meanings of those verbs can be given to you in the glossary at the end of the syllabus. So they've got, if we go back to A, it'll be there. Um, yeah, there we go. Appraise. So that definition will give you exactly what you need to do in the question answer to get all of the marks needed for that question. The second thing that I want to point out to you is in this third tab for both biology and English, they have a couple of resources that can make your life just a little bit easier. If you've ever interacted with some of the subject reports, you can see how well your previous cohorts have done. And some of them have example assessments, or example parts of an exception. Here, where they've got excerpts from assessments that students have submitted in the previous years. So this is the 2022 report used here, and this is a good example of it. Same with, all of the assessment types. This is for biology, so all of the conclusions. If you are doing any of these subjects and you're writing an assignment and you want a bit of guidance on like specific headings in the assignment, the subject report is a place where you can go to have a look at how students who have done things successfully have written their sections. So if you wanted to look at the research investigation, it's got, points of a research investigation snipped in here and also why they were successful in doing it, as well as for the external assessment, sample responses that were able to get, all 4 marks against all of the marking criteria. And so same thing goes for teaching. So if I click on subject report of 2022, under each of the, this isn't really too important, under each of the individual subject types, they should have little excerpts from students who have done really, really well. And you can just see an example of what a good version of your assignment is. There's the cognitive verb table there, effective study strategies if you are, interested. That's not too important for you. I'll just check if there's anything worth checking out in bio. No, okay. For chemistry, chemistry, physics, and the math subjects, your formula sheet will be found in the teaching tab of each of your subjects. In terms of assessment resources, here you've got sample assessments for all of your IAs. You've got sample annotated responses. So these are the ones that we used when we were writing our assignments to begin with. Sample marking schemes, as well as past external exam papers. So all of them are available to you in the assessment tab. So for English, it's the exact same. You get all of the samples, as well as the question books and the marking guides for the external English essay. These are going to be really, really good resources for when you're doing external prep. And for you guys, you get 3 years worth of past papers, whereas I got 1 from the COVID year. So you're in a much better position than I ever was, which is really, really good. Oh, wow. They've got like the entire essay in there, right here. So if you ever are in need of sample responses or sample bits of an assignment, sorry, I'll just share to the slides again. Here we go. There's always going to be stuff uploaded onto the QCEE website, and for any 11s or 10s watching the lecture right now, you guys will be having the 2023 subject report as well to look at. So if you're ever confused about what to do, check the QCEE website and cross-reference it from your teacher. And that's probably, the best place to go if you are getting confused at all. So, assessment criteria for each subject is displayed. There we go. In terms of overview for assessment, all of your science subjects have the same 4 kinds of assessments across the board. For bio, psych, geology, so earth sciences, and chemistry and physics. The first assessment piece that you should have done would be a data test worth 10%, then a student experiment and research investigation, each worth 20, with a 50% external. For English, your first is a written public article, which is 25%. Second is a persuasive oral. Third is a creative or imaginative piece. It's a narrative usually. And then fourth is an analytical essay worth 25%. For math methods, you have a PSMT, same thing with general and specialist, by the way. PSMT worth 20%, examinations worth 15 each, and 50% externals. I know some of the languages have multimodal tasks worth 35%, so each of your internals individually can range from about 10% to 35% on a mark basis. And they all come up and add to 100. Sorry, I just got really scared. There's like kookaburras in the background, who just started squawking. I don't know if you can hear them, but that really scared me. Anyway, moving on from that. The key points is that both of your internal and external assessments are kind of weighted the same. So they're worth different amounts of marks, but 1 mark in the internal assessment is worth the same as 1 mark in the external. But after you gather your raw scores, they are judged against each other. So that's sort of all the info that I have on raw scores at the moment. If you have any subject-specific questions that I am not able to answer, please check out our ATAR Notes forum pages and our discussion boards, because we've got a greater range of tutors than just myself. They'll be able to answer more of your questions a little bit more in detail. As for our next step, we are going to talk very, very extensively about inter-subject scaling. Now, there is some crazy complicated math involved, and I'll do my best to simplify where I can. But inter-subject scaling is completely held together by QTAC. If you've got any questions about, scaling, they do have like an option to contact them. There's like an email on the QTAC website that you can use. As well as they've got stalls at things like tertiary expos that you can come and ask questions about as well. Now, we know that there are a lot of different levels of subjects that you can study in the QCE. And every single subject is very fundamentally different to the other subjects. There are subjects that are, more personal. There are subjects that are more subjective. There are subjects that are more content heavy, and it changes across the board. Scaling, the best way to think about it is that scaling doesn't necessarily reward you or punish you for studying certain subjects. What it tries to do, or what the purpose of scaling is to make the QCE an even playing field. So you can choose subjects that you enjoy without worrying about, performing really, really well in them, especially if they're quite, tough subjects to begin with. And I know tough is a subjective term, but bear with me here. So for the sake of explaining scaling, I'm going to be talking about 2 hypothetical subjects. The first one being darts and the second one being Sudoku. Alex gets a 70 in darts and Billy gets a 70 in Sudoku. The question is, are these scores equally impressive? Out of 100, they are the same number, but competitive-wise, are they the same? We can't actually base this on whether the subject is harder or not, because that's a subjective thing. It changes depending on the person. Instead, you look at how competitive these subjects are, or overall, out of everybody studying these subjects, how are Alex and who's the other person? Billy comparing? And so to do this, you need to look at the context of the subject scores. Alex's 70 out of 100 in darts was the highest in the state. Billy's 70 out of 100 in Sudoku was the lowest in the state. And so the question is, how does that impact the way that you perceive these scores? Suddenly, Alex's 70 seems a lot more impressive because he was able to outdo all of his other competitors, whereas Billy's literally the worst competitor from his cohort. So the perception changes a little bit. Oh, whoops. I clicked the wrong button on my applied subjects. Sorry, guys. Here. There. So if we were to take scaling, it's kind of taking the competitiveness and taking how you have ranked as a competitor in your subject against everyone else in your cohort. So here are someone's sample subjects. They're doing English, math methods, legal studies, physics, and then drama. And then on the middle column is all of their raw scores. So 91 in English, 82 in methods, 75 in legal studies, 70 in physics, and 55 in drama. Oh yeah, full disclosure, these are made up subjects and made up rankings. Nobody I know has gotten these scores personally. I've just made them up. In terms of, oh, in terms of percentile rankings, let's say that getting a 91 out of English placed you in the top 8% of all of the English candidates, which means that you're in 92nd percentile. Math methods, if you got an 82 out of 100, you're in the top 15%, so that's an 85 of 85th percentile. Legal studies, you got a 75 out of 100, and you're in the top 72nd percentile. Physics, which is a 70 out of 100, is also the top 72nd percentile. So your performance in both of these subjects is the exact same relative to your cohort, even though your raw scores are actually different. And then for drama, a 55 out of 100 placed you in the top 51%. And so once all of these percentiles have been identified, you can actually go further than this. So the first step of the scaling process is to rank each of the students as to how they performed in their individual subjects. But what if it's easier to rank highly in some subjects compared to the other? So for example, in one year, the external for, I don't know, drama could be much more of a convoluted question compared to another year. And so more people would have done better in drama and the easier question stimulus compared to the harder one. But that doesn't necessarily change, and that'll affect the subjects, but it doesn't, sorry, that'll affect the subject scores that the students are getting, but the subject is still the same. So, for example, if you were to run a race, the ability for you to win a race in the Olympics is very much different to ranking first in a kids marathon. So here you've still, ranking first places you in that 99th percentile, but the difficulty of getting to that 99th percentile in one situation was a lot more competitive compared to the other situation. So even though the first step is looking at context, second step is ranking the subjects against each other using something called a polyrank. Now, the maths behind this is actually where it gets a bit insane. So I'll keep this bit simple. What this basically does is it takes all of your percentiles or like your new scores out of 100 for all of your main 5 subjects and compares all of the other people who are doing similar subjects to you and spits out a number that kind of shows where you exist on a scale of 1 to 100 compared to everyone else in your cohort. So for all of the other students that might have gotten a 92 out of 100 in English, what kind of subjects were they doing and how are they performing in that? How are they going to be ranked? Polyrank kind of is like a really derivative or like really, really basic form of an ATAR. And That's not where it ends though. So the current poly rank for this person is a 74.4%. So compared to all of the other people who are doing similar subjects to that person, they're ranked in about the top 75%. Sorry, top 25% or the 75th percentile. So overall, all you need to know is that a poly rank provides an overall indication of each student's QCE performance. And then the poly rank becomes their new scaled score. You find the average poly rank of the students who achieved a certain score in a certain subject, and that becomes a new scaled score. So let's say that people who were doing drama, as an example, um, of every single person who got an 85 out of 100 in drama, their average poly rank was about 87, and so 87 out of 100 becomes the new scaled score for drama. So here you've got 74.4 as the poly rank that's being made for this person. And average poly rank for every student in this state with a raw 91 in English was a 94.5%. And so you can see here, English is starting to scale up because that 91 out of 100 that the student had gotten was quite a competitive score. So compared to other subjects, it's probably going to be worth more than just a 91 out of 100, which is why it's gone up to that 94.5. So that whole poly ranking process changes all of the subject scores until a new poly rank is made. So basically, ATAs undergo this process of ranking your individual subject scores and then averaging them to a poly rank. And then that poly rank is used to rank all of your new subject scores and create a new poly rank. And it happens again and again and again in a cycle. So scaled scores create a poly rank, the poly rank creates new scaled scores. And the cycle repeats until your poly rank stays the same. And when that happens, you flatten out all of the poly ranks and you settle on final scaled subject scores that combine to something called a TEA, or a tertiary entrance aggregate. So English, the raw score was 91 originally, but it ended up increasing to a 95.23. So it scaled up. Methods went from being an 82 to a 90. Legal studies, a 75 to a 70. Physics, 70 to a 75, or 76, I should say. Drama from 55 to 51. And all of those scaled scores out of 100 are added together into your TEA, which should theoretically be out of 600. Those TEAs are then ranked against each other, so each person gets their own TEA. They're ranked, leading to the percentile ranking. So the top 30 or the top 0.05% get that final ATAR. The next 30 get a 99.9, the next 30 get a 99.85, and so on and so forth. So the ATAR is a percentile rank from less than 30 to 99.95 as a summary. It is based on your top 5 subjects, and the subject scores are always out of 100. And they are based on both your internal assessment and your external assessment. The subject scores are scaled so that achievement across different subjects can be compared against each other. And after the scaling process, we have these final scale scores which combine to form an aggregate, which is used to find your percentile rank, or the ATAR. At the end of the day, you should all be studying subjects that you are good at, or you are enjoying, or you somewhat need for your university courses. And the goal should be to perform as best as you can in all of them to increase your chances of getting a good aggregate score. So, I've already gone through the QCEE website with you, but hopefully that made sense so far. If you do have any further questions for me, please let me know in the chat box and I'll answer them for you. But for the rest of the lecture, we're going to talk a little bit about tips to get a good ATAR and my main study strategies that I can use. Now, there isn't a definitive guide to get a good ATAR because everybody has different capabilities, different expectations for themselves, and different goals that they want to achieve at the end of a year. But the basic question for everyone should be, how is it that you can maximize your marks? And if I had to wrap it up in like one little um, saying or one way to, think about it, keep it consistent. Don't think of the QCE as like a sprint that you need to cram for in the span of like a month or so. It's a marathon. So there are going to be times in grade 12 where you just finish a line of assessment and you'll get the task sheet for your next assessment the next day. And it feels really, really mentally exhausting, and you can just feel the burnout kind of creeping up on you sometimes. But the reality of the situation is like, if you're able to pace yourself in really, really small bits across the term, you're going to fare a lot better than somebody who crams the night before each of your assessments um, going forward. So conserve your energy and release it like short term and then build it up to the external period at the end of grade 12. As for, how to sort of do that while avoiding burnout as much as you can, I've got some tips for you. But my tips may not work for everyone. I just do want to preface that. So if you've got some time and if you're in grade 11, try and workshop or try and what's the word that I'm looking for? Test out certain techniques that may be good for you and suss out all of the ones that are definitely not good for you and the ones you want to avoid. So without further ado, the first technique that I would probably highly recommend is to have a system. Because on top of doing, 6 subjects, you probably will be doing some form of leadership in grade 12. Just being a senior is, a leadership skill within itself. Um, People will have co-curriculars, whether that be music, sporting, volunteering, charity work, community service, etc., etc. And it's going to be very, very overwhelming to keep on top of all of your commitments. So you need a place, or it's good to have a place where you can write all of that down and prioritize them in order of what needs to be completed urgently and what can sort of rest on the back burner for a little bit. Having that system means that you can break down all of your tasks into very, very digestible bits. So if you've got an assignment coming up in the next 2 weeks, have tasks saying, oh, write the rationale, write the introduction, write the first body paragraph, collect your sources, I don't know, finish the bibliography. Break it down into bits that can be done in, 30 minutes to 40 minutes instead of this massive assignment that's worth 2,000 words that you need to write. Um, and then if you are ever stuck on how to break down into digestible bits, the subject syllabus can be used really, really easy for that. So if you ever look at any of the practice or sample assessments, you can see the responses are broken up into headings. Use those to prioritize which headings needs to be done first, and so on and so forth. So with that, we've got a couple of articles that can help you do that. Study timetables work for a lot of people I know. They never personally worked for me, but I know that they are quite effective for most people. For me, they were just too rigid. I couldn't give myself an allocated time to do the same subject every day or every week. And so I was organized in a slightly different way. QCE organization is all about keeping on top of everything that is pending because there are going to be a lot of things that are pending at one time. For me, this never worked. Sometimes it does for some people, but this was just too much for my brain to handle. But if you're able to break down all of the free time that you have into time designated for co-curriculars versus time designated for subjects versus time designated for just general homework, you'll be a lot more on top of everything. For me, what worked was a to-do list. So like at the end of each school day, I had a notebook where I would write down each of the things that I needed to get done. And that could be as simple as doing 5 minutes of UCAT practice, or writing my rationale for my bio external, or reading the novel that I needed to get done for the English external, etc., etc. And then through my free time, I would have like certain blocks to do certain things, whether that be, one block for co-curriculars, one block for leadership, one block for study. And I would go through the to-do list in order of like what was most important to get done and cross everything off at the end of the day. Obviously, things that I couldn't get done within the time that I had allocated for myself would be moved on to tomorrow. But having that system put in place made sure that I was consistently productive instead of just procrastinating everything to the end of the day, which is very, very dangerous to combat. So things would be crossed out if they were completed. A line would go through if they needed to be sent to the following day's to-do list. Or a line would be crossed through if they were cancelled, and then anything that wasn't crossed out would be sent to the next day's to-do list. This one worked the best for me compared to a study timetable that was really strict. And then, yeah, the following day, you create a new to do list, write down everything that needs to be completed, with the ones that were not completed from last day being the top of the list. So you get them done early. And on this to do list can be the really simple things, whether it be, writing an email to your teacher or, I don't know, calling your coach about something. They can be on that to do list as well, just as long as everything is prioritized. Once you've set up a system, it's really, really important that one, that system is kept consistent, and two, the system is kept in balance. And friends, it is all about getting academically buff. This whole system is very much a marathon. You need to be able to conserve your energy when it's not needed and use your energy when it is required. With most of you coming out of your IA3s at the moment, most of you, I feel like some people would be finished with their IA3s by now, would realize that this QCE game isn't just something that you can stretch on for years and years. I imagine, especially during this holiday, most of us are going to be feeling extremely burnt out with the externals on the rise. It's really, really important that you get into a comfortable mindset during these holidays. So you're able to tack on another term of content as well as, mocks and externals and all of that fun stuff that comes with it. So whether that be involving the people around you to hold yourself accountable, let your family and friends know what your goals are and what your priorities are. That can help you be held accountable as well. Because if you run out of balance, you're going to struggle underneath the amount of content that you need to get through very, very quickly. And so sometimes that just meant changing things up for the sake of doing something new and getting my mindset out of like that stressed place. And sometimes that can just be like where you study. So I, for one, got really, really sick of studying at home during externals. I just couldn't concentrate. I was just too stressed out and my mind was just so distracted. And so I started going to the library with my friends. And to this day, I remember it was like the week of our biology mocks. Me and two of my friends were sitting in one of the booths at our local library. And there was like a whiteboard there, and we were going through the entire process of DNA replication. And I had like tried to learn this last night, but it was just not going in. Could not remember how to do it for the life of me. And so I got out my notes, which I had done really, really well, and taught both of my friends. They asked as many, I encouraged them, like, ask as many questions as you need. You need to actively challenge me. Only then can I think about things properly and like give you an answer. Because the more people question you, the more that you cement that topic into your brain. And so I did it for DNA replication. The other two friends did it for another topic in biology. And to this day, I know all of the steps of DNA replication off by heart. It's just something that's ingrained into my brain. Granted, it helps that I tutor biology for my job, but it was just a very, very effective place for me to study. And the two people that I was working with were also like productive to study with. And that's the most important thing, because study can be social, but also really, really procrastinating if it's with the wrong kind of people. Other options include going to just friends' houses at school, outside. Sometimes I had friends go to local parks so they could get work done. It can be wherever you're comfortable doing it. However, on top of this, you need to be making sure that there's time in your life for your life to be living. Where like take off time for small sport, family, seeing friends, community commitments, etc., etc. Um, Even if it just means, FaceTiming your friends while coming home so you can just see social connection after. Um, Very much consider the QCE as a long game. And at the end of the day, you guys are very, very lucky because you're almost there, which can be as terrifying as it is exciting. But my tip is to be aware of the time of the term because there were so many people in our grade, especially, who by the time it got to September were just so burnt out they couldn't extend themselves until the externals were coming around. What you want is that for not to happen. So on top of keeping things in balance, you also have to be productive. So when you're studying, make sure you're actually studying. Instead of just dedicating like an hour to get something done, maybe getting everything done in a short 20-minute burst is going to be more productive for you, depending on what kind of person you are. And so study preparation in general is really, really important. You cannot just say to yourself, oh, at 3:30, I'm going to study modern history for 45 minutes. It's not going to be productive because you don't have any prep material planned. You don't have any goals for that study session. And so once you get to it, you're going to be really, really inclined to switch the tab from your textbook to Netflix, and then nothing gets done. Before you actually sit down and have a study session, have a list of the things that you need to complete, whether that mean the chapter review questions at the end of the book or the 4 dot points that you weren't able to complete last night from the syllabus or all of the practice questions that my teacher had given me in the previous lesson. Have goals, which actual tasks that you need to get done. And that's the only way that your study is going to be productive because you've got an explicit goal to fulfill. Try and minimize the amount of distractions that you can have. Be in a well lit room with plenty of water, things like that. Turn off your phone or notifications if you need your phone to study. I don't know, can't imagine why, but I don't know, maybe there's notes on there that you need to handwrite. Handwrite as much as you can because your externals are not online yet. You will be handwriting these responses for the most part. Get comfortable doing so early. And what I did was, I got this tip from someone. I can't tell you if it's effective or not, but I use the same brand of pen in all of my study preparation as the pens that I used in my external. So whether or not if it was like muscle memory or like placebo sense of comfort, um, I practice handwriting with the same kind of pen. Set yourself up somewhere really nice and have a setup for yourself as well. Because if you can limit your distractions, the less guilty you will feel about studying and then being not productive. If studying at home isn't any good, try and seek out some more options. Whether that it can just be as simple as moving outside, for example. So if you have good study hygiene, you'll need to study less overall, and your sense of satisfaction after getting study done will be much higher as well. So study smarter and not harder. Hopefully, that is all good. Now, for if you find that your productivity levels are rapidly decreasing, you need to be changing things up. Because once you get into that mindset of, getting distracted or or procrastinating, day after day, um, it's going to come a week before the external exam and you'll have to cram the entire syllabus in 7 days. And that is not anything anyone wants. That should say before the end of 2023. I'm so sorry. Prior to the end of this year, try and work out what works for you the best. Or prior to the end of this holiday, try and work out what works for you best if you're in grade 12. So that come external time, you've got a list of strategies and backup strategies that work well and guarantee your productivity during the time that you need it most. So that can be just changing your study techniques. You can use, if regular old flashcards aren't working for you, try Quizlet. Look at any of those Anki. Oh my God, Anki, I'm loving in uni. Any of those online flashcard websites are really good because they make like little games for you to play as well. Songs, sometimes diagrams, mind maps, videos, Crash Course. Oh my God, Crash Course saved my life for biology. I learned everything I knew off those YouTube videos. Short summaries. video recordings, audio recordings, teaching other people. That was the one that worked for me the best. Dot point essays. So a really, really good study strategy for English would be to get your question for the external exam, and instead of writing a full essay, because that's, mentally taxing and exhausting to do, write dot points for what you're going to do in each of your paragraphs. And they're not just like random dot points, right? Put a dot point for your thesis, put in the quotes that you're going to use, put in the aesthetic features that you're going to talk about, put in stylistic devices that you're going to talk about, put in cultural assumptions, values, and beliefs, audience positioning, all of the stuff that makes the English paragraph really, really high standard. And do that for all of your body paragraphs, as well as your introduction and conclusion. And then it always makes sure that you're thinking about the important things to include without the mentally exhausting nature of writing an entire essay. This worked for me really, really well. Mind maps and basic pictures, chunking. So that basically you get like a blank page and you write down everything that you can remember about a particular topic. You then go back to the textbook and then in a different color or or like a highlighter or something, add in all of the information that you missed out and then repeat this over time. And then the goal is to not forget the info that you repeated out the first time. Elaborate on your notes, rote learning, repetition for memorization, changing your study location, changing study time, and so on and so forth. So mix things up and keep it interesting for yourself. So, give me a second. Oh, okay, whoops. If you need some help, there are heaps of videos online on our website that help with subject-specific videos. These can be things like, work solutions, study tips, etc., etc. Highly recommend you check them out using the link below. Thankfully, by the time that I got into grade 12, I knew what had worked for me because I had done all of the workshopping and experimentation in grade 11. And what that meant was for content heavy subjects, I would dumb it down. For, DNA replication and protein synthesis, I would just memorize all of these little pictures for each of the steps, and then I could teach it to anybody that I knew. Then made them ask questions so I could explain all of the details more in depth. For English, once again, dot point essays, so good. And then if you do have people who are studying the same novel as you, pester them for feedback, because parts of analysis that they may be able to see you might not have seen before, and then ask them to give you their essays as well to check. For maths and science as well, chemistry and physics, practice questions galore and timed practice exams, because that's going to prepare you best for what you're going to get in your external. Tip number 4 is do the small things really, really well. And if you're able to consistently get small tasks done, it's going to add up to a great amount of productivity. Realistically, everyone out there has similar access to school teachers, to textbooks, and to free resources. If you do small things well consistently, it adds up. So if you're feeling, too mentally exhausted and burnt out to do method study for, chapter revision, maybe make a summary sheet of all of the calculator instructions for that particular topic, and then learn how to use the calculator so that tech active becomes really, really quick. In the end, that's not a very taxing thing to do. You're just searching up things on a calculator and writing them down in one place. But it's going to be a small step that improves your productivity a lot when it comes to your actual external prep. And the net gain is something that adds up over time. And that is what gives you the advantage over other students. So making sure that you're mentally healthy by staying hydrated, having good posture, an extra 5 minutes of study, or an extra 5 minutes of break time, depending on how exhausted you are, paying attention in class and interacting with your teacher, and having good health and hygiene habits are going to give you that extra edge, even if they seem insignificant in the long run. Lastly, make use of the resources that are available to you. So I've gone through all of the features of the QCAA website. Make sure that you interact with all of the other websites that are available to you as well. I know artofsmart.com has QCAA specific information on there. Super, super good. Facebook groups for each of your QCE subjects let you have access to resources and questions by other students, which are also very, very helpful. Ask your teachers if they've got any extra resources or worksheets that they can give you. Usually they're quite nice about it and will upload them onto, Teams or OneNote pages or Google Classrooms. And be as collaborative as you can, because the more that you give to other students, the more they're willing to give you back. And that can be the difference between you knowing what's on the external and you not knowing what's on the external. So if you don't know where to start, as I said, please check out our website. We've got free QCE notes that are available for you to download, as well as articles, videos, all sorts of things. And the more that you interact with this material, the more familiar you're going to be come external time. Check out our forums if you've got any other questions. I will be hanging back around 10 minutes after today's lecture if you've got any final questions from me. But if you've got, queries or doubts coming within the next, 4 or 5 months, please head to our forums and one of our tutors will be able to reply to you. Our QCE videos are a breakdown of concepts within the syllabus. Super, super helpful if you want access to work solutions to practice exam questions as well. And a newsletter, which will have little articles that are continuously being updated. So even if it's just an article about you being able to deal with procrastination, it's probably worth checking out. So sign up to that. And then articles I already talked about. We also do have a QCE podcast, so which is actually quite exciting. It's quite new. Sometimes the topics on there are completely different to what you will be studying, but it's nice to get a little break and also a bit of a testimony from previous students who have, sat QCE. As I said before, our lecture series runs every single holiday season. So if you want to come back for some external prep, we'll be running pretty heavy external prep lectures in the September series for all of you grade 12s. And then for any of you year 11s, there are going to be Head Start lectures for the first couple of topics of Unit 3 and 4 in September as well. So I hope to see you there. I think it would be really great if you keep it consistent. Because at least with this, you've signed up, you've made a commitment to the lecture series, and you at least get the 2 hours of time that you're signing up for, which is kind of why I kept doing them in grade 11 and 12 as well. Just as a summary, please feel free to interact with any of our resources. If you go to atarnotes.com/shop, you get all access to our paper like study guides. Once again, if I had to recommend one to you, please get the text guide for your external book that you're studying, especially if you're not the best at English like I was. It just makes the analysis part so much more easier. Oops, I don't know what happened there. Hold on. Okay. Hopefully the slides are back up. Yes. We're gonna act like nothing happened. But yeah, as I was saying, so much easier. You guys are very lucky to have the course guides in the actual QCE editions. I remember having to sift through, oh, sorry. I remember having to sift through all of the um New South Wales and the Victorian ones, and I would look at all of the questions and see whether there were questions that would align to our syllabus as well, and I would pick and choose them. Something that me and my friends did. This is kind of unrelated to the QC study guides, but it's more just on questions in general. We got this like what all of these worksheets for methods from our teacher, and we had like printed them out into a big booklet. And the thing was like 25 pages long, I kid you not. And me and a friend, we were like, well, there's no point in doing 25 pages worth of questions in one sitting because it's daunting and we were all burnt out at the time. So we took the booklet, and luckily it wasn't double-sided or else this would never have worked. We cut up each of the practice questions and we like made them into like individual study cards. So whenever you would do a practice session, you would, and these are like complex, familiar, complex, unfamiliar questions, right? They weren't just, formulas. And we would put them all into like a little deck. And whenever we would do a study session together, we would just choose 5 cards randomly, and each of them had like a different card on there. Probably a less paper wasting way of doing that would be to get a bunch of practice questions from your textbook, snip them, and then put into Anki or Quizlet or something like that so that it's randomized, and then choose like 10 questions per day, or I don't know, 15 questions per day when it's closer to exam time. So your practice is consistent, but you're also playing around with like different topics and things. Obviously, the topic test books are really, really good, and all of the solutions in the back of them, they're created by students who have gone through the same syllabus as you. So they're people like me who are trained to, look at the marking guides and understand how they work. Um, so they're written in the way, sorry, they're written in a way that best mimics the exact way that the marking guides are written in the QCE syllabus. I hope that was very helpful. The last section of today's little lecture is going to be a little bit of a rant about mocks because me sitting here and talking about IA tips, IA3 tips is probably not going to be too effective because half of you are going to be finished with the IA3s already, and the rest of you are going to be doing IA3s that might not even be IA3s that I did subjects for. So I decided to kind of make this last section a little bit more applicable to everyone and talk about the mindset of going into mock exams. Because before writing your externals, your schools will give you a couple of, block weeks, or they'll give you trial exams for each of your subjects. They'll make you sit them in the same way that you would need to sit externals. So everybody lines up in, alphabetical order. You go into an exam hall, whether that be, a classroom that's put into an exam setup or your actual school hall with exam desks and things like that. Your calculators will be reset at the start of each exam. Your equipment will be checked before going in. Everything will be a trial of what the real externals are like. And this is a great chance for you to familiarize yourself with the externals without the pressure of needing to do well. And it isn't really, don't get me wrong, it is very important to take your mocks seriously. But if you are stressing about your, mock exam results and not caring about them, it's kind of going to set you up badly for your externals. So take them, what I say to my students is take them semi-seriously. Use them as the opportunity to familiarize yourself with the exam environment and also the topics that you want to be focusing on. By now, for all of those people in grade 12, the 2023 external exam timetable has been released. And so that you'd be able to plan your weeks of study accordingly. I hope that most of you don't have too many exams, shuffled together, and you don't have an exam in every week of the external block. But I mean, at the end of the day, there's not much we can do about that external exam. That's made by the QCEE. Don't always think, like I know all of you have your exam timetables now, don't always think that prioritizing the closer exams is the best way to go about it. Because there are always going to be subjects that are more challenging and more difficult compared to others. And so the best way that you can go about it is prioritize your subjects in order of which exams you have first and also what topics you're struggling with the most. Those are the two things that you should be focusing on. And then cross them off as you go and move on to the easier and later exams towards the end of your study. Once again, please make sure that your study is consistent and it reflects the difficulty and level of the subject. For example, if you're sitting down to do a session for math methods, and like this is approaching the end of term 3, by the way. And you sit down and do 1 hour of, simple familiar questions from the start of the textbook, you're not going to be doing anything in your favor. By the time like push gets to shove and you're approaching externals, you want to be doing like timed practice on complex familiar questions, complex unfamiliar questions, working through work solutions of really difficult questions, interacting with marking guides, and as much exam exposure as you possibly can. So that's what I mean by reflects the difficulty level of a subject. I think that's really important as well. And so for the rest of the session, I'm going to go through sort of how I would approach revision, I guess. For you guys, once you finish your IA3s, there'll probably be a couple of lessons left in school where you brush up on some of the topics that still need to be covered in the end of Unit 4. Um, Grade 11s, this is where you bank all of this information and revisit it next year when you're actually going through this. This part is for the grade 12s. Now, I like to think of external study to sort of happen in two, maybe three different blocks. The first block is revision of your notes. So you're interacting with your textbook, your school notes, and the syllabus to make sure that you have all of the content and you have learnt all of the content that you need. This is where I think the syllabus is actually a really, really good checklist. So whether that be for languages, learning all of your vocabulary and brushing up on your sentence patterns. For the sciences, it could be going through your textbook and making sure that you've got the content for each chapter and you know how to perform all of the calculations. Same for the math subjects. For arts and music subjects, it's making sure that you're aware of exactly what's going to be assessed on the external and the kinds of things that you need to put into your responses. So for English, like brushing up on your like context of a piece. I remember when we were doing Macbeth, the first thing that we did in class before even reading the book was brushing up on social norms in 17th century England and religious beliefs and societal norms and all of that. The what is it, the great chain of being and the natural order and all of that. Brush up on all of those basic concepts first and make sure that you have a really, really good understanding. Once that is established, you go on to the second phase, which is practice questions. And the first thing that you should do is practice questions with your notes assisted. So you're practicing like writing the correct answer and cross-checking that your answer is correct at the same time. You can do this with, simple familiar questions. You can do this with, essays and creative pieces as well. Whether that be like in the context of English again, because I think it's the most applicable subject. Get your external essay question, identify like the theme and then brainstorm your three arguments. Then look through your book, extract quotes, look through your notes, extract like aesthetic features that you can use or stylistic devices you can use, like put in all of the cultural assumptions, values, and beliefs into like a practice paragraph. And the next phase onto like the practice section of your mock preparation needs to come from you doing that same thing, but this time unassisted. So for maths and science, that means doing questions without, notes, only using your formula sheet and calculator. For English, it means creating all of these essays off the top of your head, memorizing quotes by writing them down. For languages, it could be off the top of your head, choosing a particular topic and then writing like an extended response question to it, um, where you're actively challenging your memory and using as many different topics from Unit 3 and 4 as you can. It's a little bit of a dangerous thing that people get into is they start focusing on all of the topics that they have too much difficulty with and they don't focus on the ones that they kind of know. And so suddenly you're learning something that's really hard and then you go and try and do the easy questions and you're unable to do them because you've been focusing on the hard stuff this entire time. Those easy marks are named that way because of a reason. Don't make silly mistakes or be forgetful when the marks that you can be getting really, really easily are right there for you. Once you've, so within that second phase as well, once you kind of get into the habit of writing these questions without any, notes on you, go into timed practice. So this could maybe be um, like a worksheet of 3 or 4 maths questions, each worth 20 marks. Allocate yourself 1 minute per mark and give yourself 20 minutes to complete every single question on the sheet. For English, it could be, can I bust out a buddy paragraph within half an hour? And that includes memorized quotes, aesthetic references, a thesis statement, a topic sentence, and sociocultural assumptions, all in one paragraph. Can I get it done in half an hour? And then obviously start with more relaxed timing to begin with, and then work your way up to the same timing that you would expect in the external exam. That's going to give you really, really good endurance for your external. The final stage, so after you've done practice questions, is the exam prep stage. So this is where you're actively doing timed exam papers, you're actively marking your exam papers, and you're actively reviewing them. I can't stress that enough. It's not enough for you to just sit an exam, say that you sat an exam, and then forget about it. The exam, half of the time dedicated to doing a practice exam should be marking the paper and retrying the questions that you got wrong, or rewriting your response based on the EAMG to make it better. I strongly suggest if your external is like a written task, so I know drama, music, um, art, English literature will all have, essay style questions. Try and ask your your teacher for feedback. It doesn't have to be a full essay. It can just be a body paragraph and just ask them, Miss or Sir, I wrote this in my own time as external prep. Would I be able to have some feedback on it? If not, give it to another like person who's in your class and then ask them for feedback as well, especially if you know that they're of the kind of like same um, wanting the same goals as you. Review other people's work as well, because oftentimes we're not able to identify what's going on wrong with our writing, but we can kind of see where improvements can be made in other people's writing. So it's a really good practice to get into with reflection. Um, Retry practice exams that you might have done like really, really early in your study, and see if you can get them right this time around. Once you start doing, practice exams and reviewing them, build yourself up to timed practice exams. And once you get comfortable with that, that's probably going to put you in the best position for external prep. I'll talk a little bit more about, mocks to externals when we get into this September lecture series. So if you want to come back and listen to that, feel free to. But all of this practice should be happening during the mocks time. By the time you get to your mock exams, you should not be 100% smack bang ready to tackle externals, because you've got another like 3-4 weeks to go. I would say being about 75% there is going to put you in a really, really good position for mocks, because then you can take the experience of the mocks and integrate it into your prep for the externals, ramp everything up, complete externals, and then, graduate with happiness, which is what we all want to happen. And so something that you can use to help you sort of guide your study is the syllabus. When you're first writing your notes, I like to tell people write them according to the syllabus dot points, because it's got all of the things that you're going to be most likely tested on. Another thing, particularly in the maths and science syllabus documents, this guidance section sometimes has like little extra bits of information that are important for you to know as well. So don't forget to interact with that as well. Um, for the Another example of how to use the syllabus is all of the math syllabi have all of the formulas that you need to know. Um, Go through your textbook, and then in one session, if I'm going to do like integration techniques, choose one question from each of the dot points and then mark them all at the end. And then you've just covered everything within that topic. The next day, come back and do a separate question from each one of those topics. And then it just makes sure that your study is super well covered and you're not just focusing down on one topic, like hyper fixating on one topic. Um, which is what we want, which is not what we want for the external. Another example of what I did is for Japanese. In our syllabi, they've got these massive tables of all of the grammar patterns that we needed to know and all of the kanji or like scripts that we needed to know. I made flashcards for all of the kanji, and I would do them like intermittently between my practice, just to make sure that like all of these scripts were the ones that could come up on my external. So if I knew all of them, then I would be covered for the external, right? As for the grammar patterns, I would often sit down and I would try and write a single sentence using each of the grammar patterns. I started off with like letting myself look at all of my vocab lists. So I had all of the words that I could choose open, and then I transitioned into writing all of the sentences myself. It just meant that when I was doing my actual extended response, like the writing task in the exam, I wasn't just using the same grammar patterns over and over and over again, because I had practiced using the full variety of the patterns that we were allowed to use. And obviously, the more variety that you can use in your writing across all of the written subjects, the better your response is going to be. Um, So hopefully that is useful to you guys. I hope it isn't too repetitive. I'm trying to just make a like this is the thing that helped me the most using the syllabus because it was kind of the only guidance that we had. Um, if you have access to things like, Atomi, there's another one like or Anki decks from previous students, use those as well and build on them as much as you can. Because the more that you interact with questions and the more that you interact with content, the less of a surprise the external is going to be. And that's what I tell to all of my students. I think I've already mentioned it in this lecture. And yes, kind of, see if you can use these as a checklist as well. At the end of the day, if you've covered all of your bases, you're putting yourself in the best preparation for your external. And now we're going to go into like that transition between the review stage and the practice stage. So once you've interacted with all of the content and you've revised everything that you've learned, um, slowly start to transition to practice questions. Now, unfortunately, some of these textbooks are still the very first edition of their publishing, so they're not super accurate to the actual external questions now, particularly with the sciences, is what I've noticed. So if you can, hop onto like Facebook groups or see if you can get Google Drives from older students who might have copies of other textbooks from the same subject. So you can get a wider variety of practice questions to choose from. If that doesn't work, usually teachers have access to a greater database of textbooks as well. So if you send your teacher a little email saying, "Hey miss, like, do you think you can give me some extra practice questions from this topic?" Or like for a humanities subject, be like, "Oh, are there any other writing prompts that you've got for this topic in Unit 3?" Send them an email, and usually they have some resources or questions that they can flick over to you if they haven't done already. So other things that you could potentially do is write your own questions and share them around with people, particularly ones that you found really, really challenging to do in your practice. If you copy down the same kind of question and change the numbers a little bit, um, try and get the question right and then give it to a friend to see if they can get it right as well and compare answers. That's actually a really, really good way of learning for the external. I had a friend who was super, super good at maths. He made his own practice exams. He straight up wrote them by himself. He would look at like the mocks papers that his teachers had given him and the ones in the QCAA website, and he just wrote a 28 question paper, which is decently difficult as well. He ended up doing very, very well in maths. So it seems to be a technique that works for most people, and is definitely something that you could consider doing. I'm not saying write your own practice exams, but thinking of questions that could come up on the external with, altered numbers and altered sentence structures is a way that you can practice as well. All right. Personally, this is my favorite study technique. I use this even in uni. It's probably one of the only things that has worked for me. Um, Bit of a background to this. Prior to learning about Pomodoro, I was a huge procrastinator because what I would do is at the start of all of my study sessions, I used to write like a study timetable, and it would be like 1 hour of science study. And I would get to the hour and open up my textbook and look at all of the chapters that we had done in the week. And it would be like 3 chapters worth of content. And I would be like, well, what do I do? And I would just sit and do the practice questions at the back of the chapter. And yeah, it helped. It was good revision and whatnot, but it wasn't super effective because I would just be sitting there for 60 minutes looking at the same 3 chapters every time. And then the moment that I got distracted or I had finished a chapter, I would just slack off for 10 minutes and then come back. Pomodoro technique is a really, really structured revision plan where number one, you pick a task and it has to be specific. So instead of, study biology for an hour, it's review protein synthesis and recognize review protein synthesis in terms of transcription and translation. Sorry, I keep using biology examples. It's just very fresh in my mind at the moment. Um, then what you do is for 25 minutes, you work super consistently. You review all of the content, try and see if there are any practice questions that you can do, and um, focus on that topic for a 25-minute burst. Then, once that 25 minutes is done, give yourself a 5-minute break. Within the 5-minute break, you can either, reflect on whether or not you need more practice on the same topic or pick a new task to do. So sometimes I would move on from one 25-minute block of biology to one 25-minute block of maths to one 25-minute block of Japanese. And you would do 3 to 4 blocks. And at the end, you would give yourself a longer 15 to 30-minute break. It just means that your brain is focusing on a short term goal instead of a long term thing for an hour. And you would not believe how much your productivity improves from this technique. Sometimes you can even use your technique for like more low key things. So once, I think it was over the June holidays as well, I wanted a break from all of the UCAT practice that I was doing. So I did a Pomodoro where in the first 25 minutes, I went through my maths textbook and wrote down all of my calculator functions. The second 25 minutes, I went through my Japanese textbook and wrote down all of the kanji that I needed to know for the next term. The following 25 minutes, I went through biology and I went through all of the definitions that I needed to know. And then I took a break. And it was super, super brainless because the entire time I was just copying down things from my textbook. I wasn't learning things like super, difficult. I wasn't doing questions. But those little things make up that foundation for when I am ready to do questions and it's like time for me to study properly. The foundation is there and it's strong and it's solid. And that's what I would recommend if you're facing severe burnout, if anything. So please use Pomodoro technique. There are like Google extensions, Chrome extensions, Edge extensions that you can get that do Pomodoro technique automatically. So all of the timers just run one after another and you don't even need to do anything yourself. Super, super productive. And it's one that I use into uni to this day. So I find it effective and hopefully you guys do too. All right. If you are also like me and you spend a lot of time procrastinating with websites, this Edge extension like literally saved my grade 12 Forest. And I have it on my phone, I have it on my Google Chrome, I have it on everything. It's beautiful because you set this timer on your Chrome extension and it disables you from going on any other website. Like you have to stay focused on the thing that you are doing. No Netflix, no YouTube, no Instagram, Snapchat, etc. It is just pure productivity. And then if you are able to do that successfully, you get a tree and it adds to your garden and is the most satisfying thing when you show your forest to all of your other people and there's just beautiful trees everywhere. Uh, it's just like a very self-indulgent thing for me, but it really did help with my procrastination because it was just that like instant gratification, instant satisfaction as soon as I finished the Pomodoro. So if I was feeling really, really deadbeat and exhausted, I would combine the Pomodoro with a forest session and have that 25-minute timer so that by the end of the Pomodoro technique, after doing like 4 rounds of it, you get 4 trees. And my forest would be 4 trees bigger, which honestly, like, what more do you need in your life? Procrastination really did help. I understand that sometimes this doesn't work for people, and that is completely fine. Maybe there's just something, um, maybe at the end of every session, you just need to give yourself a reward of some type, whether that be, 5 minutes on the Switch or a chance to get something from the kitchen. You go outside. I don't know what will work for you, but there needs to be something that can reset your brain so you're ready for a productive session and that you don't just keep putting everything off until the last minute. All right, in terms of what to actually do in the mocks, make a note of your timing and know your vocabularies really well. For maths and science, be aware of the differences of how you feel in multiple choice compared to short response and paper 1 and paper 2. Humanities, keep all of your papers organized on the desks because you guys are going to get booklets of sources, writing paper, working paper, etc., etc. Timing for writing each segment of your essay. and write down a small list of important key dates to remember the historical context for history subjects if you want something to memorize. For languages, pay really close attention for what language you're supposed to write the response in. I remember for Japanese once, we got this mock exam where the first couple of questions are usually responses that you have to write in English, but this mock exam was like write your response in Japanese, and about 3 people did it properly in the exam. So make sure you note down what language they're asking you to answer in. Use the same equipment for the mocks as you would for actual externals. So that's why I said, like, I use the same pens and writing equipment that I used for like my revision, my mock exams, and my actual externals. And also just be respectful to the teachers who are marking your mocks too. They are putting in effort to, give you feedback. If you give at least dot points in each of your answers, they'll be able to give you some kind of feedback. And hopefully that concludes the oh sorry that concludes the main things. Just don't be studying the wrong way. So if you include all of these tips that we've talked about thus far, you should be setting yourself up in a really good position for the external exams. So key skills from this lecture: have a system and keep it balanced. When you study, ensure that it's productive and use some of those techniques to make sure that they are productive. Do the small things really well and do the small things consistently. Use what is available to you and make use of all the resources that you have. And so that's it from me. I hope that was a productive lecture for all of you. If you've got any questions, I'll sit around and answer them from the chat box. But if not, best of luck for all of you guys with your QCE journey. If you do come around the next September, I look forward to seeing you guys again. But other than that, good luck everyone, and I'll see you next time.